Summer's here, and with weekend getaways, celebrations, and more on your calendar, Nordstrom has everything you need for your best dress season ever. From playful prints and breezy fabrics to 70s-inspired looks and bright handbags. Discover new arrivals from your favorite brands like Reformation, Veronica Beard, Farm Rio, Levi's, and more. It's easy too, with free shipping and free returns, in-store order pickup, and more. Plus, Nordy Club members enjoy free 2-day shipping on thousands of items in select areas. Shop today in stores and at Nordstrom.com.
From director Wes Anderson, Focus Features and Indian Paintbrush present The Phoenician Scheme.
It's my most important project of my lifetime.
Meet Zsa Gorda.
We keep getting assassinated, unsuccessfully so far.
He's the most bold, most elusive, most wanted man on the planet.
Help yourself to a hand grenade. You're very kind.
Starring Benicio del Toro, Mia Threppleton, Michael Cera, Tom Hanks, Scarlett Johansson, and Jeffrey Wright. The Phoenician Scheme, rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13. In theaters everywhere this Friday.
Place Underneath.
Tell me, like, you will get promoted, even if it's false.
Right.
I just want to hear it.
Yeah, I think that there's like this massive amount of power in that. Even if, you know, that means you might be like super amoral when you do that because you know you're lying.
Right.
But it gets people hyped up. If you just like, I know this with all of my being and I will not be questioned.
Right. Or like, I think that's a big reason why tarot cards on the internet takes off because, you know, it's fun to do tarot card stuff, but at the end of the day, wrong person. It could just be cards and pictures on cards. And people, I've seen them, they give them money. They'd be like, $10, yes or no question. And they'd be like, will he come back? It's always a girl asking if he's going to come back. I don't want to give me the $10. No. No, he's not. Get a job.
Also, do you really need him to come back?
No, get him out of here.
I imagine it's not a good relationship.
Men don't do that. They're never on like psychic readings. Be like, $10, will she come back?
No,
like,
but they manifest those fears and sadnesses in other horrible, unhealthy ways. So don't worry.
Oh, right.
They also feel things when they go through breakups.
I'm sure. Yeah, but it's usually like, fuck her.
But not really. They go home and they cry about it.
Oh, they do?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why they get mad because they can't openly say that they're sad about it. And so they have to express it around other people through rage and contempt. And
wow, I got to get to know the male psyche more. I had no idea.
Trust me. Listen to me. See, look, they believe me because I said it with confidence.
You did. You said it with confidence. Like what we're talking about today, all these educated hussies, right? I like that you wrote this in the script. We love an educated hussy.
We do. We are. Are we recording, Rain? Okay.
Thanks.
So make sure we record. Welcome to Someplace Underneath. I'm Natalie Jean.
I'm Amber Nelson.
Yeah, we do love an educated hussy. And we are continuing our discussion about higher education in Mormonism because I do think that there is some really major connections into, first off, how they've extended their life for so long as an organization, but also maybe why some of the, perchance, mental struggles that are occurring within some of the higher ups in the church are also occurring. I'm presenting a thesis or a proposition.
Right.
I don't know.
So it's the two wolves
It's been
t-shirt.
a while since I've been in college. I don't remember what.
No, you're very smart. You are an educated hussy.
Thank you.
So they got the two wolves inside of them, whatever you feed. And they kind of keep going back and forth. But there's a lot of cults, especially in America, because we're so vast. And we're freedom of religion. Mm-hmm. So I can go to Arizona and start one right now. Will it last 100 years? No. I don't think it would.
How do you know?
I know. I should give myself more credit.
Yeah, you can ruin a lot of people's lives for like generations.
Natalie. Oh my God, you believe in me.
I do. I really do. Yeah, so we had talked a little bit about the past of how they started to get intermeshed with higher education. And it wasn't necessarily an insidious or dark reason. Depending, I guess, on your perspective, they did go colonize and do all this stuff. And we don't like that. But they did it. And when they got there, Brigham wanted to set up a town. He created a town. He used Joseph Smith / other people's ideas of grid cities. He built what became Salt Lake City.
So he was like a model train enthusiast, but like real life.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that's probably how people who build huge companies like that see all of us as like little ants they get to move around.
Right,
you know?
little plastic
little
figurines.
Toys. Yes.
Yeah.
How society's been built, I think. So when he was doing that, he wanted to also have school. He wanted to whether or not it was because he wanted to control people, we can't say. But he did want to build education systems, and he kind of did. And there was actually, as we mentioned, an upswing in desire for learning within this early Mormon church. There were women who could be considered progressive, even if it was only for white ladies. But I don't know. There's pushback. There's pushback against change, against progress. Is there always? I don't know. I've been morose today,
right,
questioning a lot of things. It seems like there's always, in every moment in history, one step forward, two steps back. I don't know.
Right, like Rome fell, and then it was people that used Colosseum bricks to build fire huts. That must have been really sad.
Yeah.
If you were like, oh, I don't know how to read or write or even what that is, but I do know that there was a civilization before me that had a great time.
Some of them did, at least, I guess. It's a lot. It's a lot. Learning about history sucks sometimes because you do have to face a lot of really unpleasant things, right, in history. But it's important to know it. And this was something that was happening in this new America that was forming, this new state of Utah that was coming together, filled with these Mormon people who were following Brigham Young. And there was a fair selection of people in that time who were also like, hey, let's teach people things, even women. Women. Yeah. When Brigham Young Academy was first established in 1875, it was expressly described as being a form of education for Mormons, which we covered last episode. And it was by Mormons with an emphasis on Mormon doctrine. But that people like Eliza Snow also wanted medicine to be taught, and not just taught, again, taught to ladies.
Holy shit.
And there were other instances of white women progressivism appearing to take precedence in early Mormon communities. For example, the push for women's voting rights came very early compared to the rest of the country.
Yeah. Do you think they had pink scalpels?
Oh, that would be cute.
Like pink stethoscopes?
I'm pro pink stuff for whatever gender. But if you're a lady and you want to have pink stuff and like as a construction worker, I say fucking do it.
Yeah, girls girl building, girls girl hospital.
Yeah, why not? I love it.
And so they were pushing for voting, but it's probably because their husbands were like, oh, my wife will vote just like me.
Yeah. You know, you kind of have to like, you see, wanting women's voting rights to appear, that seems really good and impressive and progressive and all the things. But then when you pull back a little bit, you kind of realize that quote unquote privilege was encouraged because the church thought that the women would vote in the ways of their husbands. And also they wanted to defend polygamy. They wanted to continue to be able to have plural wives. And they said, well, if the ladies vote for it, it'll help us. And so it wasn't necessarily because they valued the wives' opinions of things.
Right.
And many of those women would have voted and fought for polygamy, you know, just as women today vote for fewer bodily rights on a regular basis. Even pushing for women's voting rights to be eradicated sometimes, in modern day. So, women vote against their own interests sometimes, and that's their choice. And those women will be picked, don't you worry. But they're winning the world's worst contest most of the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, congrats, you win the steaming pile of wet diarrhea.
Yay.
All of it's for you.
It's all for you. You get picked.
Yep, none of the other girls get even a drop of it. Isn't that nice?
Wow, yeah. Oh, no, poor me. I don't get your bag of shit.
Yeah.
Oh, but no, I don't get a taste of it?
No, none. Not even a lick. Not one tongue.
Damn.
No. So beyond women's foray into learnedness at this time period, After Brigham's death in 1877, the church was becoming more structured and established. The schools had been going up, the buildings were erected, and there were some dissenting opinions on what the future of the church should look like. A young Mormon man named Franklin Harris, who had been taught at the early years of Brigham Young Academy and went on to attend Cornell University, was very important in this bridging of deciding where the church was going to go as far as moving forward or holding on to traditions. So isn't that weird, though, to think about that? So Franklin Harris grew up in the late 1800s when, these towns were still sort of being established, but also went to Cornell University, which is like this weird bridge to modern society to think about. It was like he grew up in the Wild West, but also Cornell University existed in his timeline. Is it
going to be like us being like, oh, we didn't have phones and now we have like AI where I can just make up a whole world and like, here it is.
Yeah, it might feel like that to future generations, to be like, wow, just in this time period, they didn't have cell phones.
Wow.
Yeah.
Grandma, upload your soul to the cloud.
What's happening? I don't like this world. So when this young man, Franklin Harris, went to Cornell had been in operation for a couple decades. So just think about that Wild West and academia kind of being there at the same time. And it's just not how my brain puts it, but that's probably a me problem.
Is it one of those like Cleopatra's closer to the iPhone than the building of the pyramids?
Yeah, it is, for me at least, that it feels like that doesn't make sense, but that's how that happened. And also, look at the guy who, I pulled this picture up of the guy who founded Cornell. I don't know anything about him, but
party on the bottom.
He does have Conan O'Brien hair and sort of a biker Hells Angels beard on the bottom.
I can't get a read on him.
I don't know. I don't know what to think about Ezra Cornell, if anybody knows. Maybe I don't know if he's bad.
This is like several chromosomes just being like, where do we go? Like there's no...
He seems confused.
Yeah. Okay.
But he founded Cornell University. Anyway, Franklin Harris, who is the Mormon we're speaking of, received his PhD in chemistry from Cornell and that elitist New York institution. And then he returned back to Utah because he grew up with the Mormons in Salt Lake City. And he wanted to become a professor, which he accomplished. He went to teach at Utah State Agricultural College. Now, this is also the same timeline where Brigham Young University's built up, University of Utah's getting built up. This is another college that was founded around the same time as those Mormon schools, but was actually proposed by outside government officials. And there were Mormons who helped establish this school, but it was decidedly not to further the Mormon agenda, unless you count just like enriching Utah people or whatever. But
oh, so people like in D.C. were like, we'll give you a little bit of money to make a college?
Basically, the government, yes, like the government said each state should have their own state school and like build education systems.
Oh.
And so there were Mormons who said, we'll take you up on that. And this school was built. And so it wasn't anti-Mormon, but it wasn't the same as these other schools that were made expressly to teach Mormons in Mormon doctrine, if that makes sense.
Right.
So essentially, you were technically kind of more progressive thinking or forward thinking, or at least an outsider potentially going to this school where Franklin Harris was teaching. So Franklin Harris was sort of an insider / outsider. And he was teaching at this Utah college. And during that time, he was offered the opportunity to become the president of Brigham Young University in the year 1921. So basically 100 years before right now, where we're talking, 104-ish when this comes out. So
he's done a lot in his life.
This young man?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Helped start a school.
Well, Franklin Harris didn't start a school. So Franklin Harris, to keep track, we're learning about him today. He grew up in a time where Brigham Young Academy had been started by Brigham Young.
Right.
As a young man, he attended Brigham Young University and then went off to Cornell to finish his PhD and all that stuff. And while he was gone, Brigham Young Academy became Brigham Young University. That occurred around 1903.
Okay.
So if that makes sense.
Okay. It took me a second.
No, it's a lot. It's a lot of info. Please let me keep re-explaining because I want you to follow this story.
I will say this guy sounds really insufferable, and he's probably going to say, well, actually, like he's that kind of guy.
I mean, in a way, yeah, you're right. So here we have this time period. The church has been established. This is post Brigham Young, and the people of the Mormon Church of Utah are trying to figure out how are they going to fit into this newly establishing country of the United States. And this stuff just happened. This is only a few generations ago, which is really wild. And it seems as though Franklin generally was more on the side of let's really teach Mormons a full, well-rounded education. He accepted the position of running BYU in 1921.
Harris was not yet 40 years old and retained a boyish, clean-shaven face with a full head of hair, but his youthful demeanor did not slow his earnest desire to reform the institution. He was the first person with a PhD, as well as the first monogamist to lead the school. Monogamist?
As in he wasn't a polygamist.
Whoa.
Yeah, which was a big progressive change in the church at this time. And this push and pull, the reason we're talking about this push and pull is still occurring to this day.
Do they think you're weird if you only have one wife?
Well, not polygamy anymore, but this pushing and pulling of how much should we allow people to learn?
Right.
And how much should we keep them from education to keep them within the doctrines? We spoke with YouTube creator couple Jordan and McKay, who are both ex-Mormon, about their personal experiences with the colleges adjacent to the church and their view of the ever-present tug of war between contemporary education and traditional Mormon doctrines in these schools. Jordan is an associate licensed therapist who received her degrees from University of Utah, and her husband, McKay, attended BYU, Idaho, a campus notorious for being even more conservative than its sister campus in Utah. Their experiences don't represent everyone's experiences from these institutions. They simply bring their personal observations. We'll be releasing all interviews we conducted in full at the end of this season, so you can get full context of our discussions. BYU and BYU, Idaho. I mean, they seem like there's at least some good majors and stuff there. Would you say that's accurate?
For BYU Idaho, I find that extremely hard to believe.
Well, BYU Idaho was a little bit lower.
Like my whole family goes there. I'm not trying to dog on everybody.
Oh, no, of course.
But it's pretty subpar education, if you ask me. And then on the flip side, BYU Provo, like the main BYU, just announced today that they are going to build a medical school. So it's pretty
much more prestigious to get in, like comparatively to like much harder to get into BYU Provo, like much more like anybody and everybody gets into BYU Idaho. So like it's ironic that they're not that far apart, but they're perceived quite differently.
Yeah. And the Provo branch was the first one, right?
I think so.
Yeah, it was the first one. BYU Idaho didn't exist until like the early 2000s, I think it was, because previously it was Rick's College. It was just a 2-year college, and then once, I don't even know if the church owned it at that point, but the church got involved. They called it BYU Idaho, and they made it a 4-year university.
Yeah.
So kind of weird.
So I have a question about science at a religious university. How does that work? Like, do they teach, life begins at when, the sperm enters the egg, or creation, like anything in history? Like, how does that covered?
In the they call the like entry level classes, they call them foundations at BYU Idaho. I'm not really sure exactly if it's the same exact thing at BYU Provo, but like the first like 2 weeks of those classes, especially regarding science, are like apologetics for how you can be in a career in science and also be a firm believing member of the Mormon Church. So essentially where they kind of draw from is from people like Marion G. Romney, who is Mitt Romney. He's related to Mitt Romney. I can't remember in what capacity, like grandfather or
something like
probably his dad with how old Mitt Romney is. But basically they're just kind of like, a lot of people in the past were really anti-science and completely against the ideas that we hold true today. And there are ways to find absolute truth, which is through the restored gospel. And there are revealed truths that we are able to find and prove through the physical world that you can also prove through the restored gospel. Hi, baloney.
Sorry, your cat's participating apparently.
Yeah. So it's really interesting how that works. All I ever took was foundations, like science or whatever, because I wasn't.
You weren't doing stuff.
I didn't do a lot of. I wasn't into like biology or any of the things like that, and I wasn't in school for very long, and didn't even end up graduating. But I'd be interested to see how.
Even in art. Because remember,
you
had that art class where they blurred out the photos.
Yeah, they had like a whole lesson about how nudity in art is not inherently pornography. And then even in like some of the anatomy textbook pages, they would blur the reproductive organs of people. It was just,
So like, tell me how you're getting a good education if you can't even like look at the photo, like the biology photos in the textbook. Like, that's concerning.
I think if people want to learn, they should go discover. And you should discover other religions even. And if your religion is the one, then it should prove itself to be the most true, right?
Well, that is what Franklin Harris... That's what his thought process was. And that was a progressive thought at the time. He actually suggested, hey, let's, at this school, now that I'm the president of BYU, let's have a vast library where we'll be known, books upon books about all of the religions of the world.
Right.
Let the outsiders know that this school is where religious pondering occurs. And that sounds really great to probably a lot of people.
I would love that library.
Sure. Unsurprisingly, maybe, though, it was not a crowd-pleasing idea amongst Mormon leadership. But Harris pushed forward anyway. There were certain leaders of the Mormon Church in their rough time period that would have pushed back a lot more. But he happened to be in a time period where leadership was like at least willing to allow him to give this a shot. And they're like,
right.
Let the people learn, right?
I feel like every 10 years there's like a rapid shift. So we think of 1902 as like all kind of the same, but that was vastly different than like even 1890.
Oh,
1920.
100%. And within an organization, anyone really, but especially in a spiritual one, the person who's at the head of it will really distinctly change how a lot of people think on the inside, the lower down tiers, right? So
yeah, it's almost like the person at the top makes it okay to say and do certain things for everybody else at the bottom.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa. No way. You're crazy.
It's like influential, and it goes beyond like their policies. It's just who they are as a person.
Oh, my head. It hurts.
Hey, I'm Paul Scheer.
I'm June Diane Raphael.
And I'm Jason Mantzoukas.
And we're the hosts of How Did This Get Made, a comedy podcast where we deconstruct, make fun of, and celebrate the best, worst movies ever made.
Have you ever seen a movie that's so bad that it's actually good? That's what we're talking about.
From blockbuster franchises and made-for-TV romances
to bonkers 80s action flicks and obscure sci-fi musicals, we cover it all.
You can find How Did This Get Made wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode, idiot.
Nearly home. Isn't home where we all want to be? Reba here for Realtor.com, the pros' #1 most trusted app. Finding a home is like dating. You're not just looking for a place to live, you're searching for the one. That's where Realtor.com comes in. Like any good matchmaker, they know exactly where to look. With over 500,000 new real listings straight from the pros every month, you could find your perfect match today. Ranch style with a pool, barn dominium with an in-law suite? Realtor.com's got them. Modern craftsman with a big yard and a treehouse out back? Realtor.com will have you saying, yep, that's the one. No more swiping. It's time to start finding. Download the Realtor.com app today, cause you're nearly home. Make it real with Realtor.com.
Pro's #1 most trusted app based on August 2024 proprietary survey. Over 500,000 new listings every month based on average new for sale and rental listings. February 2024 through January 2025.
Harris was able to push forward with these concepts as the president of BYU. He hired 5 professors with doctorates. That was the first time teachers were coming in that had PhDs and doctorates. He encouraged educational growth. He essentially took a sort of lower cut rate kind of private school that didn't really have high levels of academia and turned it into a formidable hub for learning. And so in other terms, the elitists, come in and they're like, oh, you think you're better than me?
Right.
But I think that in many ways, it's good for people to know lots of different kinds of things. And doing that, challenging thought comes into play, and adding classes like evolution in religion, philosophy in religion, etc.
Whoa, dangerous.
It can be considered dangerous to some people. Exactly. But that's what Franklin Harris did. It's essentially what a religious studies degree is built upon. And we talked to someone for this season who is in that field, which we'll get to. There was a sweeping swath of religious classes, but only 7 of them were directly addressing Mormonism at BYU in this time period.
See, I think you should have something like a philosophy and religion class, because say if you don't, and you're a stout, devout, whatever your religion you are, and you go out in the world and you meet someone who's a philosopher and they start challenging you, you are either going to A, look like an idiot, or B, maybe denounce your whole religion.
We also spoke with Dr. Joseph A. Laycock, an author, professor, and religious studies scholar who specializes in new religious movements, of which the Mormon Church is a part. He has also written several books about how horror films, D&D, apocalyptic ideation, and the satanic panic interrelate to spiritual movements. Seriously, check out his latest book, The Exorcist Effect. It's great. We asked Dr. Laycock his thoughts on whether a religious college can teach from a neutral platform.
How would you, as someone of a religious study major, I don't know, how could you teach science? Like, how can someone like a school that is a Christian Mormon school that believes like men gets their own planets when they die, how can you equate that and then also teach, I don't know, astronomy, that there's Saturn and Mars and Uranus and there's Steve's planet? Like, how do they juggle those two worlds?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about The Exorcist earlier. So the Catholics have done this for a long time, right? Georgetown is a Catholic university. All the faculty are Catholic priests. They have, Catholic priest archaeologists like Father Marin. They have Catholic priest psychiatrists like Father Karras. It can be done reasonably well, right? I mean, ultimately, there's going to be a conflict, right? So, and also the Catholic Church is a bit more flexible than I think a lot of people realize about science. So they've said evolution, as far as we know, is probably correct, but we don't believe that the soul is evolved. You can't say the human soul is evolved, or that we don't know there's a human soul, right? So there's always going to be a conflict, and we can definitely see examples with Christian schools where this just sort of totally falls on its butt, right? And students are coming out of it with no science training at all because they've been taught creationism, or they've been taught that mainstream science is just a lie. So I think there's a whole spectrum of this working more or less kind of okay to just being a total disaster, right? I also don't know how many LDS people actually believe that they're going to get their own planet when they die. We know that when the LDS church started, most of their converts were not from America. They were mostly immigrants. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those immigrants would basically do anything because they were starving.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
And there's people who say, well, my ancestors, they were potato famine Mormons, right? Meaning they were just in Ireland and the Mormons showed up and said they had food. And they're like, what's that? Planets? Whatever. You got food though, right?
Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah.
For sure. That was actually even studying the Mormon history for the season. This has been a conflict since like education started in the church, and there's been a back and forth between the leadership, even with BYU, about going more towards evolution and science, and then like the pullback from the conservatives, even when the church was really young. And I know that there was one guy in the early 19th century that was trying to, the early 20th century, was trying to like say, yes, evolution's real, but Adam and Eve is also real because they came from space. Like they were implanted to evolutionary Earth. And so that was like a way that they were trying to mesh that together even, 100 plus years ago.
Wow.
Trying to make it work. Yeah. And that is, again, the push and pull of something like this, right? In many circumstances, when there is a very stringent, all-consuming doctrine in a church, you're kind of pushed to the fringes of society because you don't want pushback. And Mormonism has sort of somehow evaded this. They have very strong thoughts inside the Book of Mormon. And they don't, sorry guys, really make sense.
Oh.
But
like the own planet thing?
There's some stuff in there.
Yeah, how does that fit in with astronomy?
Well,
where can I point the telescope at it? Like, is that John's planet?
So there's many things, right? And that a lot of times can push people out away from society a little bit. But Mormonism and active Mormons are not pushed away. They're actually very enmeshed in culture and politics and society, which is the perplexing part about this church, in my opinion. So at the time, there was some push to not be that way within BYU, within Mormonism, within Utah. That is not how BYU would be described today, however. It's very different there. The fact that evolution was being taught about at BYU so early might surprise people today. If you told, people who know anything about BYU at current day would be like, oh, they were early practitioners of teaching evolution? No way. That's weird. And there were contemporary church leaders and presidents from this time who were not really super concerned about keeping this information from church members. And we'll talk about the way that these things were meshed here today on this episode, even back then. And it's not to say if you attend BYU that you're like an idiot who doesn't understand the world. However, it is a very conservative private college now. And so there are certain things that are discouraged from being learned. We'll say that. Jordan and McKay chime in with their anecdotes surrounding McKay's time attending BYU Idaho as a couple.
I'm sure there's like very bright, wonderful students there. I'm curious about some of the rules that you have to abide by. Like I'm sure there's a curfew and no holding hands.
Well, they lock you in. The curfew locks you in the building.
If you're on campus. Well, I don't think they lock you in anymore.
They used to.
It used to be really strict, but now a lot of the on-campus housing has like scan-in badges to get into the doors. So you're probably going to get caught. But in the off-campus housing, which is where I lived the whole time, it doesn't really matter because if your roommates are really report happy, they can just report you for being out past curfew.
But anything and everything that you could think of that would be a rule is a rule. I mean, they still say no leggings, right?
Only very recently did they begin to allow shorts on campus.
Yeah.
I need to get the details on that one. This is from my sister who is currently attending. But they might be just the BYU Idaho approved athletic shorts. I'm not sure if it's whatever shorts you want. Even if you wore leggings to the gym, you would be usually asked to put on the athletic shorts over your leggings.
If you report do you get like more points or something?
No, you just feel self-righteous.
Sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
Wow, it just feels very 1940 to me.
Get some meal credits if you turn somebody in.
I think. I mean, some people are super report happy and will do it for just about anything.
Yeah,
somebody
I
that
knew
told
people...
us, remember the Victoria's Secret package?
Oh, yeah. Was that at BYU?
Provo. I can't remember.
I think it was at Provo,
Idaho, but she got just a Victoria's Secret package. Nobody opened it, didn't know what was in it, and she reported her roommate because it must have been scandalous.
No, it could have been workout clothes.
Literally, like
you can get reported for language. My hair would get me in trouble.
Yeah, can't have long hair if you're a guy. No beard.
There was a big culture of trying to skirt the rule on that one for I think 1 semester or maybe even 2. You could get a beard card if it was a medical necessity.
Yeah, tell me what's medically necessary.
You would have to get a doctor's note after that in order to continue.
I'm not trying to laugh at your experience.
Please do, because it is cry-worthy, honestly.
I mean, I went to an extremely liberal couple. I went to 2 colleges, and they were both very liberal. And of course, there's issues in any setting and any group of people. But the ethics, what is it called? The moral office,
honor code
is such a foreign idea to me. Like my college had all gender bathrooms and showers. Like that's where I went to school. So
yeah, that is not even.
Yeah,
they would lose
not even the same building.
Yeah, and so I guess is it because if it's a this is a broad question, but if it's a private college, they can just make those rules up.
Yep, and especially so because they have religious what do you call that? Religious freedom. Yeah. Like when I worked for the church can be is by the Constitution allowed to discriminate on basis of religion because they are a church. Mm-hmm. Whereas anywhere else, you are not allowed to discriminate on basis of religion.
So you can be fired for breaking the rule.
Yep. If you were to work for the church and then you decided to leave, they can fire you. Or if you're not living up to their requirements and holding a temple recommend, which is one of their requirements, then you can be fired. And they have 100% basis for it. No attorney is going to be able to get you a wrongful termination. So
that's wild. That's so intense, guys. That you had to. Just marveling at you. You came out and you seemed so like chill and normal.
Well, and it seems that I don't know what it was finally, because we left while I was attending BYU Idaho online, and I had let my hair grow out because, I mean, it was during the pandemic and I didn't care. But that last bit of the semester, the Honor Code office was trying to get in contact with me, and I'm not sure if it was because someone reported my hair or if someone had seen the content that we were making, and they reported me because we were being apostates and blasphemous and stuff like that.
Committing apostasy. But I mean, they couldn't get a hold of him, and they called me. Like they started calling me to figure out where he was and why isn't he answering his phone. And
I just waited it out, and it was fine.
Mm-hmm. And how did they get your number? Like,
she was my emergency contact.
The church handbook too. Like they could go into our ward and figure it out.
Wow.
Yeah, they have ways. Like if you don't, we always advocate for people to remove their records because eventually they will come back. They will track you down and put your records in the right area, and then somebody will end up contacting you if they can.
Yep.
Not learning bong rips, that's for sure.
No, not until they get out of there. Then they don't know how to do it. And then they smoke too much weed, and then they have a panic attack and have to go to the emergency room.
God, but I went on a long time ago. I met somebody who he just said he went to a school where you weren't allowed to drink even after you're 21, and you're monitored and you couldn't leave. It was a lot of rules like this. Mm-hmm. He was like a full grown man who was shocked that I wore a black dress. He's like, "You're wearing black. Whoa." And he'd never kissed anybody because I reached in to kiss him and he crashed his car.
Wait, what?
He crashed. It was like he didn't crash, but he like dented it.
You've never told me this before.
No? So he was raised super strict. And at the end of the day, I thought that was kind of cute. So I like reached in and he drove me home and I kissed him. And then I go and I was like, "Good night." And then I go back into my house and he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I dented my car. I crashed, and I looked, and he like backed up into like a tree or something. And then I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I had like a t-shirt on with no bra because I went to go like change real quick, and he was just like staring at me with his jaw open.
Oh my God. You just broke his brain, Amber. Where is he now?
I don't know.
Is he just walking the streets?
Just thinking about my nips and that kiss. But yeah, he was a full-grown man.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking late 20s.
That makes me feel a little bit sad for him.
A little bit.
Well, I hope he's okay.
I hope so. But he did seem like everything was sort of like taken care of, if that matters. Like where he worked was sort of, he got that job because of his friends through the college, through the church.
Yeah. And I don't think that that's bad. I think maybe that can cause problems for you if you like engage in society and sometimes.
Yeah, if you kiss a girl and you crash your car.
Crash your car. Sometimes you're gonna have to go to the body shop after you kiss somebody. He didn't receive that much pushback at the time for this. He also had support from other professors at the university, and also, there was never a push from him to try to turn people away from religion or Mormonism. Their idealistic dream, I believe, at this time was to be able to hold on to the Mormon faith system and place it against and alongside education. And I think that's kind of a pipe dream in some capacity, but I can admire that that's what they were trying to achieve, that they were trying to say, listen, let's keep our faith, keep our Book of Mormon doctrine, but also learn, and we can maybe make those work together.
Yeah.
And just like today, as some things have not changed very much at all in 100 years, older Mormons were beginning to be wary of these higher education hubs. They didn't like that their kids were learning about evolution or challenging things that they read in the Book of Mormon or learning about other hedonistic world spiritual beliefs. A lot of older Mormons did not care that this was happening at Brigham Young University.
Right.
Which is,
they're just crocheting by the fireplace.
Being like, these little sluts, what are they learning?
Yeah.
This is something that's still debated today, and something that I'm consistently trying to understand better is, can rigid doctrinal spiritual beliefs coincide and live harmoniously next to science and history? Is this a dangerous place to live mentally, emotionally? I personally, Natalie, have concerns over it, and these concerns come from some of the belief systems that have arisen from modern LDS church members who we're going to talk about in this season, who have attended centers for higher learning like BYU. And I'm not saying it's because they're Mormon or because they went to BYU, but some of the things that are being done that are extremely harmful right now were encouraged and even taught in these institutions, right?
Oh.
So that's why we're bringing it up. It sometimes feels like those contrasting beliefs can sort of like hurt your head in some ways, if that makes sense. Like if you're trying to make these two opposing ideas work together, that it like makes you go cuckoo.
Right. It feels like you'd be pulled in all different directions the whole time and not just like sit at a park and be like, but what do I think?
Right.
And like, what's my mental and bodily autonomy?
Right. In the 1920s and 30s, when all of these tensions are arising, the opposition in the church to progress becomes a bit more vocal, especially with Franklin Harris and the university. It's kind of haunting how similar some of the parallels are to right now in time. One of the loudest voices opposing progress in the university space was a woman named Amy Brown Lyman, the 18th president of the Relief Society, which, as a reminder, this organization is within the LDS Church, and it is specifically for women. So she ran the Relief Society, and she did not care for Harris and his approach to giving people the power of knowledge. And she would have loved TikTok. I think she would have had a lot of stuff to say.
As women envisioned careers outside of the home across the country, and many limited their number of children, America's average family size dwindled. Lyman likely did not share these more radical statements. Yeah, I could see her being a total pick-me on TikTok.
But if you'll take note, in this time period in the 30s and 40s, 20s, 30s, and 40s, really in the 1900s, this was, again, another time period where women were thinking of careers and wanting to have fewer children, and more conservative people were getting very mad about it. So this was this is not the first time in history this has occurred by any
right,
stretch.
because it's not just like the babies. It's like, no, but these women are getting autonomy.
Yes.
And they're like out and they're talking to me and they're voting, or not at this time, but like time. Not at this time. Not at this time. Not at this time. Not at this. That's what they talked like though. But it's like, no, it's not when are you going to get pregnant? It's when are you going to go away?
Yeah. And also the, in a cynical manner, in high control groups, if you're not making more members, there's not more people to like do the bidding of the church or whatever, right?
But she wasn't a good housewife?
So, well, it's interesting because it's ironic. She was often mocked for not being a good housewife, for speaking her mind, running the Relief Society, even though she was fighting for conservatism, which you see again in conservatism now. There are a lot of women who fight for it and then get pushback from men, even though they're like saying the same things. But they're like, shut up.
Shut up. Or they're like, we just need to return to tradition. And I'm like, where's your husband? Where's your kids? Have you been picked yet?
Right. So
why aren't you home right now? You have a career and it's on TV and you have a hair and makeup artist talking about we need a national divorce. Like, bitch, fuck you.
Yeah. Well, this is also kind of the sentiments that were occurring in this period. And this woman was kind of facing those same things where she was like fighting for these things that wanted her to like be slapped down the whole time. But this is something that still happens and will probably happen forever and ever and ever. I could honestly talk about this time period in Mormon and U.S. history for hours, providing personally no professional insight.
I like it.
Back so soon? Oh no, what happened?
A little incident at the dog park. We gotta head to the vet.
Oh, not again. These bills.
We can use CashNet USA. We can apply in minutes, get a fast decision, and have the money in the account as soon as the same business day. All right, Cheddar, back in the car.
When you need money fast, be the hero. All loans subject to lender approval. Speed of funding is subject to verifications and your bank's processing times. See CashNetUSA.com for more details.
Hey, I'm Paul Scheer.
I'm June Diane Raphael.
And I'm Jason Mantzoukas.
And we're the hosts of How Did This Get Made, a comedy podcast where we deconstruct, make fun of, and celebrate the best, worst movies ever made.
Have you ever seen a movie that's so bad that it's actually good? That's what we're talking about.
From blockbuster franchises and made-for-TV romances
to bonkers 80s action flicks and obscure sci-fi musicals, we cover it all.
You can find How Did This Get Made wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Idiot.
So, you know, this push and pull of this progressivism versus conservatism, you know, I get why people get annoyed with progressives. I get it. It's insufferable. It's a know-it-all thing. It comes. I know people think it's elitist.
It's like high and mighty, and like sometimes they're just not funny. It's like, shut the fuck up.
Yes, I get it. I get it's annoying, and I do understand that. The actually stuff about Bible stuff can be insufferable. I don't actually enjoy it. I really don't care what you want to believe. I don't. We have literally no idea what is happening in the universe, right? We essentially know relatively the same amount as an ant knows about what the universe is compared to how much we don't know. I'm not trying to be like, God isn't really idiots, you stupid morons.
Right, it might exist. I saw a picture of NASA from outer space, and it looked like an eye. It looked like an eye poking through a curtain.
Oh, no. That's fun, honestly. I like that. The issue I have is when you need to be oppressive, manipulate, lie, steal from people to uphold your beliefs to make them work up on a pedestal. Dr. Laycock describes one possible outcome of withholding information from your church flock.
So I got slapped with, I had to teach this class called Philosophy in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. I'm not a philosopher, so I was kind of just doing the best that I could. And I'm posing these like old philosophical questions to these students. I have this one evangelical girl, and for every like profound like question that has haunted theologians throughout the ages, she had some weird little platitude that like she learned at Bible camp.
Oh, like what? Can you give us an example, or is that like
yeah? So we read this weird heretical Jewish text that I found really interesting. So I shared it with the students, and it's describing God's body, and it's like, you know, going from like God's toe to his ankle is like 4,000 parsangs or something, which was some unit in the ancient Near East and so on. It sounds like Galactus from Marvel Comics or something.
Yeah.
And Jews condemn this. They said God doesn't have a body. This is blasphemy. And so I just asked them, like, what do you guys? Why would somebody write this text? Like, why would someone make this and make copies of it and so forth? And so Bible Camp girl raised her hand and says, well, what I learned at Bible Camp is God is big enough to make the whole universe, but small enough to be your friend. Right. And so she had an answer like that for everything. And then we finally got to the problem of evil. And we said, why are babies born with leukemia? Right. Mm-hmm. If there's an all-loving, all-powerful God, why is a baby born with leukemia? And she said, well, for stuff like that, I would just ask my counselor. You know, I would just ask the camp counselor. And I said, but what's going to happen when your camp counselor dies and you have to try to answer these questions yourself? Oh. And she just kind of like had this look of horror on her face, right? Oh. And then we had the summer break, and she signed up for another one of my classes in the fall. And she came and talked to me after class, and I mentioned something about, you know, her perspective as a Christian or something. And she said, oh, no, I'm not a Christian anymore. I'm an atheist now.
Whoa! Wow.
Which was not what I wanted. I don't want to, you know, I don't want any of my students to like change their religion or anything like that. But I think what happened was this was a student who was actually a very intelligent young woman, but had been given these kind of saccharine nonsense that was very fragile. And when she thought about it for just a little bit, it all snapped.
If you have to lie and cheat and manipulate people for your beliefs, then it's kind of like maybe your beliefs are wrong.
It's hard whenever you need to reverse engineer these ideas to fit into a book that you want to believe. If that makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
That's when it gets kind of difficult. So despite conservative pushback, Harris went on to preside over BYU for over 2 decades, from 1921 to 1945. And towards the end of Franklin Harris's tenure, I would be remiss not to bring up Fawn Brody.
Oh, did they bring up the kids peeing in cat litter boxes? Because it was so progressive. Did they have that at BYU? The kids peeing in cat litter boxes?
But maybe. It's quite possible. No, Fawn Brody is somebody who actually is heavily admired. I admire her. I've brought her up before because she's the one who's credited with one of the most accurate documentation tellings of Joseph Smith's life. It's not scathing. It's not like a gotcha journalism. It's not like a fawning, ironically, because her name's Fawn. It's not fawning over Joseph Smith, but it's a stark look at the real person based on records and historical documents and things that she could accumulate. And that is the book called No Man Knows My History. So she put this book out right around the same time that Franklin Harris's tenure was over at BYU. And this is another progressive person. Fawn, basically, she went down that dreaded path that conservative people like Amy Brown Lyman feared the most. She grew up in Utah as a faithful Mormon. She went away to college, studied a bunch of history, probably developed a sense of autonomy, maybe had an orgasm, and she lost her faith.
Oh, no.
So she was born into a devout family, though. Her uncle was an apostle and the 9th president of the LDS Church.
Oh, so she was also wealthy.
She actually grew up in poverty.
Oh.
But she had people in her family who were wealthy, if that makes sense.
I see.
Her grandfather was also the president of BYU directly prior to Franklin Harris and his progressive reforms. So she grew up around progressive thought, but also extremely conservative thought within her family. Her quote unquote radicalization, however, occurred mostly during her graduate work in Chicago. Her work is largely respected, though critics suggest she's presenting certain things as facts that aren't really fully checkable, which is to say, you could say that about any documentation of history.
100 years ago. Yeah.
Well, she put this out. Yes. So when she put this book book together, No Man Knows My History. It was about 100 years after Joseph had died. Yes. So her apostle prophet uncle was not a fan of this book. It was a great humiliation to him at the time because, he was one of the headships of the whole church, and his niece was putting out this book being like, so Joseph Smith was probably a con artist, but she was doing it through documentation. She wasn't just like doing what we're doing, which is me being like, he seems like he's like whack.
Yeah, he's stinky.
Yuck.
Fuck him. His dick has crust on it.
Yeah.
No, it was like actual facts.
She was following what the story told her was probably the most accurate reality, which is she most likely believed that he knew he was full of shit the whole time. Instead of somebody who, is saying stuff that might not be true, but believes it, if that makes sense. She was kind of presenting that probably he knew he was making everything up. So this book was very accurate to Mormon history. Regardless of that, the Deseret Book Company, which is the company we're going to talk about quite a bit in this season because of their involvement in multiple modern day crimes, or at least platforming multiple criminals. They were never willing to carry this book. And Deseret Book Company was formed all the way back in 1866 during Brigham's reign. And it was and remains to be the Mecca for Mormons who wish to study books about their people, about Mormonism, books that are considered safe for Mormons to read. So Deseret Books exists in a brick and mortar fashion, but it has been a book company since the mid 1800s. And they have never, as far as I've ever found in history, have ever carried Fawn Brody's book, even though it is like a complete history of Mormonism, because it makes the church look bad.
Well, there's one, cause it looks like a chain, and there's one in Costa Mesa, California.
Yeah, it is a company that produces many books and distributes many books that we're going to definitely be talking about.
20% off temple bags for a limited time only. Look at this.
I don't know if we're allowed to have temple bags. I wonder if they check your card or something.
Yeah, because I tried to look up something. I tried to look up the underwear, and they're like, you have to give us your number for your card number. So I started making up numbers because fuck that. It's like 1265.
Yeah, I mean, the underwear for sure you can't just get a hold of. I don't know if the bags are free for all or not.
Let's see. Shop now.
Uh-oh.
Stylish and functional. They look like the bags at Marshall's that are in the corner in the trash. Sorry, that's mean to say. Sorry. There's just nothing really. There's no Zynga.
That's not really their jam. They like a lot of beige, they're beige queens.
It's beige. Yeah, it's like $63.99. Okay.
They are Mormon women are the sort of at the forefront of the beige movement on social media.
I hate that beige movement.
Well,
this is what it is. Thank you for pointing that out, because why does everything look just like it's stressing me out?
Well, this company would never carry this book, even though she was, she grew up in the Mormon church. She documented their history. It was a great insult to a lot of active Mormons at the time. And my guess would be the reason they never carried it is because there's some unflattering revelations about Joseph Smith in it. And again, she suggests that Joseph was probably well aware he's fleecing people. But, there's no way to fully know that, of course. There's years and years of psychological study dedicated to cult leaders and how much do they think is real and how much do they know they're lying. And, you can't really get inside their little thoughts. So you just have to take a guess.
Because they're narcissists. They're not going to let you in.
And sometimes I think maybe they don't even know,
Right.
But that's what Fawn asserts in this telling, is that he was doing this for money and power and all of the things. So Fawn Brody's work in this time period in the 1940s was, respected by outsiders, and some believers respected it too. But traditionalists did not want to let go of their faith in Joseph, and they offered rebuttals to this that don't really hold up. But just as today, when you can't reason your idea out, you can kind of start throwing out insults and condemnations until you build enough animosity for your supporters, and then they don't really check anymore about facts, right? So even though this thing that she presented was pretty factually accurate and pretty much like kind of a scathing look at the church being like, this is probably not a thing that really happened. That didn't end the church, right? Because there's people on the other side who go, actually, you're a whore of the devil.
Or they push back further into their thing. Further into the cult.
Yes.
That's what's so dangerous about cults is you could be like, this is what is wrong. This is what is factually incorrect. And they're just like, actually, you just made me more of a believer.
Right. And, you know, you could argue maybe that's good for some parts of history. I don't know. I'm trying not to just be like, fuck these people, because I don't feel that way.
No, I'm sure there's a lot of really nice Mormons, and I don't want to shit on your bag. I just like zebra print. You know?
You don't want to shit in their bag?
On your bag. I don't want to shit in your bag either. It's a lovely bag. I just like zebra print. I like sparkles. I have tacky taste.
Me too, girl. It's all right. So, yes. So Fun Brody had these pushbacks from active Mormons at the time. And there was specifically one guy, I just had to bring this up because he wrote like essentially an editorial criticizing her book, No Man Knows My History. And it was titled, No, Ma'am, That's Not History. Which I was like, he must have been so proud of himself. I can just see him typing it up and being like, no, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
That's not history.
Small dick. That is little dick energy right there. I don't like him.
It's funny. Yeah, no. It also makes me think of No Ma'am from Married with Children. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So this is all to say that there was quite a challenge for the Mormon church, much like other extremely specific religions, to take doctrine to a very literal place and then to codify those beliefs with knowledge at the same time. So when you have a more broad religious practice where it's just this sort of vague idea about ideas and ideals and concepts, education can harmonize with alongside that a lot easier. But I have to wonder what happens when a group has to hold really unfettered yet strict ethereal beliefs like the Book of Mormon, but also blend into the bigger world. And not many groups have actually accomplished this. When you look at fundamentalist groups in general, they are considered more on the fringes of society quite often. Their education is maybe a little more sparse, or if they attend a college, it's a very isolated college that doesn't really help you integrate into society, right? Like Bible school and stuff like that.
I mean, that's, again, not to make it about me as much, but like my first class in college at LSU was the teacher said the earth has been around for billions of years. And I kind of freaked out. I went because I got a scholarship there. But I think part of it, like my training with where I was from, even though it was like an hour or so away, they don't want you going to college.
Did you have pushback for going to that school?
A little bit. It was just kind of like, why are you going over there? It's so big. You know, you're just going to be a number. Come stay. But they already kind of knew I wasn't like cut out for the town. Like I just kind of wasn't there. But they kind of like, they're like, I get an education, but you don't come back. They liked it when you dropped out.
Yeah.
You know, so they could say like, oh, well, they went to the big school, but they just want to come on back to mama.
Right.
And it's like they don't want you going out in the world. But then they get so mad whenever people don't get college education like on statistics.
Right.
So it's like you did this.
Right.
You taught the kids that the earth has been around for 7,000 years. Yeah, they're not going to cut it in college.
Right.
I had a hard time.
Or they're going, which is really, that's really sucky. Or they're going to take the knowledge in and then like never talk to you ever again. You know what I mean? Like if you keep them from knowledge and then they get to the knowledge and they're like, why did everybody tell me not to learn? Sometimes those kids never come back home again ever.
Yeah. Cut to me.
Cut to Amber, right?
But anyways, it's done on purpose. So you don't go out to the big bad world. You just got to come home to mama.
Yeah.
Come home to daddy.
So, if that's something that feels good to you as a person, don't go out into the bigger world. That's okay.
That's okay. Small towns exist.
Yeah.
And they should.
And so, like, if you're an extreme fundamentalist in many facets, you kind of are in the fringes, or you are keep to yourself, right? That's sort of where you stay. And that's not with Mormonism. The question becomes, did this higher learning both extend the shelf life of this church because it created these like the ability for people to go out into the world and bring themselves back to the doctrine, but also did it extend this church while also potentially breaking the minds of people who are put into these positions of power? I don't know. And I'm not trying to say that's what's happening, but there are so many violent crimes coming out of Mormon doctrines right now. And we have to question why that is. And is it difficult to hold these sort of unique fringe beliefs while also trying to be in society? Which is why we're talking to a lot of different people on this season.
Right. And by the way, I didn't want to sound elitist when I was like, you say Earth has been around 7,000 years and you can't cut in college, but then you get mad at the statistics about people not going to college.
I sound elitist during them.
I just think you should learn. And I do think there is a way to believe in God and science.
I do too.
But when you start saying things like, but when your religion is based on, trust me, bro,
right?
Like you don't even get to see the tablets, that is starting off on a fallacy.
Right. And I think that you're completely right, that spiritualism, God, religion,
it can work.
Absolutely can work.
Honestly, like the Big Bang sounds pretty cool. Sounds like God to me.
Sure. We don't know how the Big Bang started still, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Which is, so this is not like an attack on religion or the church, but buzzwords like cognitive dissonance, spiritual psychosis, and religious scrupulosity, they're not really buzzwords, but they do get thrown around a lot now, which leads to the question, when is spiritualism considered good and healthy, and when does it cause harm? How do we discern this? And if harmful spirituality is normalized, what are we supposed to do about it? Next week, we'll look at the beginnings of modern-day information erasure inside the church as well as its higher learning institutions. The advent of the internet has allowed knowledge to flow more freely and in some ways made it even harder to discern truth from fiction. One thing we know for sure is that the LDS Church is still attempting to shovel sand on top of a lot of dark secrets.
This show is made possible by listeners like you. Thanks to our ad sponsors, you can support our shows by supporting them. For more shows like the one you just listened to, go to lastpodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, I'm Paul Scheer.
I'm June Diane Raphael.
And I'm Jason Mantzoukas.
And we're the hosts of How Did This Get Made, a comedy podcast where we deconstruct, make fun of, and celebrate the best, worst movies ever made.
Have you ever seen a movie that's so bad that it's actually good? That's what we're talking about.
From blockbuster franchises and made-for-TV romances
to bonkers 80s action flicks and obscure sci-fi musicals, we cover it all.
You can find How Did This Get Made wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Idiot.
At Strayer University, we help students like you go from, is it possible, to anything is possible by offering access to up to 10 no-cost gen ed courses, so you can reach your goals affordably and fast. Visit strayer.edu to learn more. No-cost gen eds provided by Strayer University affiliate Sophia. Eligibility rules apply. Connect with us for details. Strayer University is certified to operate in Virginia by Chev and has many campuses, including at 2121 15th Street North in Arlington, Virginia.